No one plans to start over from zero. It just happens. A job disappears. A business fails. A relationship ends. Debt piles up. And suddenly, you look at your bank account, your life, your future, and it feels like everything you built didn't matter. You feel behind, embarrassed, tired of calling it a phase when it already feels like a pattern. But here's the truth almost no one tells you. Restarting from zero is not the same as being zero. You're not starting from nothing. You're starting from experience, from pain, from lessons you didn't want, but now carry with you. And this is exactly where the psychology of money becomes powerful. Because your financial reset from this point forward has less to do with numbers and everything to do with how you think about what happened. If you understand this, you'll stop punishing yourself for the past and start using it as an advantage. And that's what we're going to explore together. When you restart from zero, the first thing that shows up isn't a new plan. It's shame. You replay old decisions in your head. I should have saved more. I shouldn't have trusted that person. Why did I ignore the warning signs? You assume your situation is pure failure. But the book reminds you of something most people forget. You never make decisions with the information you have today. You make them with the information and emotions you had back then. You didn't mess up because you're stupid. You messed up because at that time, your fears, your hopes, your beliefs about money pointed in a direction that made sense to you. And here's the key. Beating yourself up doesn't change the past. It only weakens the person who has to rebuild the future. When you're restarting from zero, the first job isn't to fix your bank account. Your first job is to change the story you're telling yourself. Instead of, "I ruined everything," you start asking, "What did this chapter teach me about myself? What patterns do I refuse to repeat? What did I learn about trust, risk, and denial?" You can't rewrite the previous chapters, but you can decide what they mean. And meaning is what shapes your next decisions. Before we go deeper, tell me in the comments, what's one lesson your financial reset taught you, even if it was painful? When you hit rock bottom financially, it's tempting to think, this is who I really am. Someone who can't manage money. Someone who always ends up broke. Someone who just doesn't get it. But the psychology of money reminds you that your relationship with money isn't built in a single moment. It's built over years, through everything you saw growing up, through the way people around you treated debt, success, failure, through the way they reacted when money came in and when money disappeared. Maybe you grew up in chaos. Bills always late, stress in the air. Maybe you watched people pretend everything was fine while quietly drowning in payments. Maybe money was never talked about, which still sends a message, don't look too closely. those experiences become your automatic code. You don't just react to money. You react to your history with money. So, when life knocks you down financially, you don't start making logical spreadsheets. You start reliving emotional patterns you didn't even know you had. Overspending to escape. Avoiding bank statements. Jumping into big opportunities because slow progress feels unbearable. Restarting from zero isn't just about fixing mistakes. It's about recognizing that your old patterns weren't random. They were learned. And anything learned can be unlearned. Once you accept that, you stop seeing your situation as proof that you're broken and start seeing it as proof that something in your system needs to be updated. That update starts with a simple realization. You are not the only one. You're just one of the few people honest enough to see the consequences early. One of the most painful parts of restarting from zero is comparison. You look around and it feels like everyone kept moving forward while you got knocked to the ground. Friends buying houses. People your age traveling, posting, living their best life. Co-workers hitting milestones you once thought you'd reach by now. And there you are, worrying about rent, debt, or how to survive the next few months. It feels like you've lost years, but the book makes something very clear. You only see the result of other people's stories, never the risk, the luck, the silent details behind them. You don't see the help they had, the timing they caught, the close calls that almost destroyed everything. You also don't see the stress behind that new car, or how fragile their situation might actually be. The game they're playing is not the game you're playing now. When you're restarting from zero, your mind wants to compare timelines. How old are they? How much do they have? How far behind am I? But your timeline has changed. You're not building from the same starting point, with the same weight, the same scars, the same responsibilities. What looks like late on a spreadsheet might be right on time for the version of you who finally understands what matters. The book reminds you, real wealth is not a race. There's no prize for getting there the fastest, especially if you destroy your peace of mind along the way. Your job now is not to catch up to someone else's highlight reel. Your job is to build a life that's actually sustainable for you.
Another brutal trap when you restart from zero is this idea that your entire situation is 100% your fault. If I had just done this differently, if I had been more disciplined, if I hadn't trusted that person. But the psychology of money introduces a concept that changes how you see your past: luck and risk. You only see what happened. You never see what almost happened. You see your failure, the business that collapsed, the job that ended, the investment that died. What you don't see are the thousands of people who took similar risks and got away with it, not because they were smarter, but because their timing, environment, or circumstances were slightly different. On the other side, you also don't see the disaster you avoided simply by being forced to stop. it doesn't mean you have no responsibility. It means your story is more complex than "I'm bad with money." When you accept that luck and risk play a huge role in every financial story, something powerful happens. You stop seeing yourself as a permanent failure and start seeing this moment as one chapter in a much bigger book. You can't control everything that happens to you, but you can control what you decide to do now. And that's where your power really begins. Restarting from zero triggers another dangerous belief. I have to fix this fast. So you start looking for shortcuts, quick money, high-risk bets, opportunities that promise to recover years in a few months. You feel this urgency in your chest, a desperate need to catch up. But urgency is one of the most expensive emotions in finance. It makes you ignore red flags and forget one of the book's strongest ideas. The most powerful force in building wealth is not intelligence, it's time. And time does not respond to panic. If you try to accelerate everything, you often repeat the same mistakes that brought you here. High-interest debt, speculation, gambling dressed up as investing. Restarting from zero is not about finding a miracle move. It's about accepting that the path back will be slower than you wish, but more stable than you imagine. Time is no longer something you can waste, but it's also not something you can force. The unfair advantage you still have, no matter how late you think you are, is that compounding doesn't judge your past. It only cares about what you consistently do next. Small savings repeated. Tiny investments continued. Boring habits defended. Time multiplies those. If you understand this, you stop asking, "How do I fix everything this year?" and start asking, "How do I build something that actually survives the next 10? Those are very different questions. Here's one of the most important ideas from the psychology of money. Financial behavior matters more than financial knowledge. This is even more true when you're restarting from zero. You don't need to become an expert in markets or memorize every financial rule to rebuild. You need to repair how you behave when you're scared, tired, or tempted. Most people don't fall because of a single huge decision. They fall because of repeated behavior. Spending to feel better, ignoring numbers out of fear, chasing every new opportunity because staying still feels unbearable. Restarting from zero is your chance to build a different identity. Someone who doesn't need to look rich. Someone who can say no to pressure. Someone who respects their future self even when no one is watching. That identity is built in small ways. Saying no to a purchase that would give you 10 minutes of relief, but 3 weeks of anxiety. Choosing a simple, boring plan over a complicated shortcut. Being honest with yourself about what you can and can't afford, and not using shame as a weapon when the answer is not yet. You're not rebuilding just a bank account. You're rebuilding your self-respect, and that changes everything. To make this easier, I left a link in the pinned comment to the 30-Day Wealth Habits Challenge. It's a guided, step-by-step journey designed exactly for moments like this, when you don't need more theory, you need simple daily actions that slowly rebuild your confidence with money. If you're restarting from zero, Think of it as a structure to hold on to, while everything else still feels unstable. Now let's talk about something most people completely ignore when they start over: small decisions. When you're in a financial reset, you tend to focus only on the big problems. How do I get out of debt? How do I increase my income? How do I fix this as fast as possible? But the book makes a subtle point. Good or bad financial outcomes are almost never the result of one moment. They're the result of tiny, repeated choices that felt harmless at the time. A subscription here, a delivery there, a just this once that turned into every weekend. Those choices didn't ruin your life instantly. They quietly shifted your direction until you ended up somewhere you never intended to be. The same logic can save you. You don't rebuild your financial life with one massive act of discipline. You rebuild it with micro commitments. Checking your balance once a day instead of avoiding it. Setting aside a very small percentage of what you earn, so small that your brain doesn't panic. Deciding that for the next 30 days, you'll say no to one thing you know is pure impulse. These actions are like adjusting the steering wheel 1 degree at a time. They don't look dramatic, but over months and years, they move you to a completely different destination. The point isn't to become perfect. The point is to become predictable. Predictable in the way you save. Predictable in the way you avoid certain traps. Predictable in the way you show up for yourself, even when you're tired of trying. That's how people who restart from zero quietly become the most stable people in the room. There's another mental trap that hurts you when you're starting over: confusing survival mode with identity. You tell yourself, I'm just trying to get through this month. And at first, that's true. In a crisis, survival is the priority. But if you stay in that mindset for too long, you start believing you're someone who'll always be one step away from collapse. You begin to expect emergencies. You stop planning long-term because life always messes it up anyway. The book shows that your expectations shape your behavior. If you see yourself as permanently fragile, you behave like someone who believes nothing they do will matter. So you spend. You avoid planning. You make decisions for today only because you don't trust tomorrow. Restarting from zero is your chance to slowly upgrade that identity. You don't have to jump from I'm in survival mode to I'm ultra secure and rich. You just shift the question from how do I survive this month to how do I make next month slightly easier. Slightly. Pay down a tiny portion of high-interest debt. Build the smallest emergency buffer. Learn to live with one layer of simplicity you used to avoid.
Small layer of protection creates a bit more emotional safety. And emotional safety is what allows you to finally make decisions that aren't just about surviving, but about building. So what does rebuilding from zero actually look like in practice, not as a fantasy, but in the chaos of real life? It can be as simple as 3 phases. Phase 1, stabilize. You focus on knowing exactly what comes in and what goes out, no more mystery numbers. Cutting obvious leaks, subscriptions, habits, or costs that don't improve your life in any meaningful way. And avoiding new debt, especially the kind that grows silently. You're not trying to optimize, you're trying to stop the bleeding. Phase 2, protect. Here, your goal is emotional safety. Build a small emergency buffer, even if it's just a few $100s at first. Create 1 or 2 non-negotiable rules, like I always save X% before I do anything else. And automate what you can so your future isn't always depending on willpower. You're teaching your brain, I'm not helpless anymore. Phase 3, grow. Only after the first 2 phases does growth become sustainable. Start investing small amounts consistently in something simple and understandable. Increase your savings rate whenever your income grows instead of inflating your lifestyle immediately. And keep your life slightly below what you can afford so you always have margin. This process is not fast, but it is real. It respects your emotions, it respects your scars, and it respects the fact that you're rebuilding as a wiser version of yourself, not as a beginner. If you want help turning this into daily action, the 30-Day Wealth Habits Challenge in the pinned comment was built for exactly this, to walk with you through the stabilizing and protecting phases until growth feels possible again. Now, pause for a second and ask yourself honestly, if you truly believed you could rebuild from zero, slowly but surely, how would you act differently starting tomorrow? Would you still chase shortcuts? Would you still buy things to impress people who don't even know your full story? Would you still tell yourself it's too late anyway? Or would you start treating every small decision as a vote for the person you're becoming, not the person you were when you fell? You don't have to transform your entire life this week. You just have to prove to yourself that this time you're acting from awareness, not from panic. Your past is not erased, but it also doesn't define your ceiling. Some of the most financially stable people you'll ever meet are the ones who once lost everything and decided to rebuild differently. They learned to respect risk. They learned to ignore noise. They learned that wealth is less about having more and more about needing less. You have the chance to become one of those people, and that chance starts right where you are. If this video made you reflect, even for a few minutes, consider this your sign that you're ready to rebuild your financial life with more calm, more clarity, and more self-respect. To turn these ideas into real habits, check the link in the pinned comment for the 30-Day Wealth Habits Challenge. It's not a magic fix, it's a daily structure to help you build the kind of financial life that doesn't collapse the next time something goes wrong. And if you want more content on money psychology, financial behavior, and how to build wealth, even if you feel like you're starting late or from zero, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Here, you're not judged for restarting, you're guided through it, because how you rebuild now can become the strongest part of your entire story.